What we're going to do today here is just show the most common most common failure of the rear brake calipers on most Volkswagen, Audi products, and a lot of other Europeans that use this style of parking brake on the rear calipers before they went to the electric rear caliper parking brakes. Anyway, so they have this lever here, which my pry bar is attached to, which when you pull on the cable on the inside of the vehicle there, it pulls down on this lever, which on this particular car, actually this one was seized. So this lever here comes down and it's spring loaded internally here, as well as this spring here to return to the full stop up here. So a lot of times what happens is in the rubber seal that's behind this lever here, this gets all gummed up. It's just basically a single lip seal which just presses against. So there's a lot of probability of garbage and stuff getting in between there, as well as the lubricant eventually loses its lubricating properties. Anyways, so a lot of times what happens, and people misdiagnose it as a sticky caliper, and really, I mean, the caliper is sticking, but only because this lever isn't returning. So internally here, it just gets all corroded and just all gummed up. So when you pull the parking brake, this pulls down on this lever here, and you let go of the parking brake, it won't actually return. So a lot of times you can get at this from the exterior through the spokes of the wheel, and then with a pry bar or whatever, you can bring them up. But that's your first kind of a symptom, or one of the first things you should look at, especially on a car that's like a northern car from the Salt Belt. Anyways, so one of the symptoms of this is usually your parking brake lever will be a little loose at the bottom. Usually, the cables are nice and tight, nice and taut, and once these start sticking and the lever doesn't actually return all the way up, the parking brake handle may seem a little loose at the bottom, like there's play in it. So that's a quick indicator that this may be seized. These are pretty easy. You can do this without taking anything off the vehicle. Right now, the wheel's still on. Come in here with a 13 millimeter wrench, take off this nut. This is a regular right-hand thread on here. And once you take this nut off, you can put a pry bar or screwdriver in behind the lever like this, sort of, and just sort of lightly start prying it away. It's a splined shaft, very much like the wiper motor shaft. From wiper motor, the wiper arm shaft. So once you get that off, this spring here, you can take this off even by hand. It's not much spring pressure here, but do keep an eye on it. So once you take that nut off, this will all kind of come loose. You can pull it right off, and then this little ball on the end of the cable here will come right out of there. And then you take a T30 Torx. There's only one Torx screw as you see it here, and this holds that whole bracket to it. The rest of it just kind of butts up against a piece of the casting. But you take this bracket off, now you've got this bracket hanging off here. Then you can take a little pick in behind here and clean up the seal. Lots of penetrating fluid, lubricant, and then follow it up with some good quality grease. What I usually do is with this knot in place, I'll put this bracket back on, sort of put the nut on, and just kind of work it with a wrench here, back and forth till it feels like it wants to return on its own. Then setting it all back up, put this bracket back on, line it all up, and then make sure that the caliper is returned all the way in terms of the way the lever is positioned with the lever off. Put the cable back in the lever here. Put the lever back on, set it all up so it's sitting up against this stop, which is part of this bracket here. And put the nut back on, and then the spring, usually you put the top in first, and you see this little slot here. This little slot here is what allows you to put the bottom of the spring in. But this can easily be done by hand. I can take this in and out, no problem. I've done quite a few of these. As a matter of fact, this car here was seized. This left rear caliper was seized when I got it. It works nice and free now. So very often this happens. Could save you a couple $100 in not having to replace a caliper. So any questions, let me know.